Hi guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. But before I jump into the scary stories, I do want to give a big shout out to today's sponsor. So TT Dye was kind enough to reach out to me and send me a bunch of their contacts. So I do have astigmatism and I do have a prescription. So these are prescription contacts, but they don't believe they are astigmatism contacts. So they're probably not going to be like my perfect vision, but I've used this brand before in the past and I really like this brand. So I just wanted to quickly come on here and show you guys all of the different options that they sent me and all the different colors, and just give you guys like a quick close-up of what their contacts look like. And if you do like colored contacts or want colored contacts with a prescription, they do offer them and they are reasonably priced. I ordered a bunch of them last year, I think it was, like before Halloween, but when I moved, I actually lost all of my colored contacts. So I was really excited when they reached out to me and offered to send me some of their contacts again. So I was able to replace some of the ones that went missing, but they sent me a Egyptian blue. So it looks like this. It comes in this cute little package. And then they also sent me 4 cases so I can store them. So they're all good for about a year. So after you open them, you have about 12 months to use them before you probably shouldn't use them anymore. If you guys hear my dog barking, he's running around upstairs and he's being kind of bad. So I got the Egyptian blue ones, ice green ones, macaroon purple, polar lights gray. So I'm gonna throw them on really quickly, show you guys what they look like up close, and then we can jump into the spooky stories. Okay guys, so this is the contacts that I chose to wear for this video. So I filmed that a couple days ago and I'm just coming on here now to read the scary stories. So I used the Egyptian blue contacts. This is what they look like when I have my makeup done. I think they're really pretty. They're my favorite contacts out of the 4 that they sent me. So thank you again so much to TTDI for allowing me to work with you. I really like these ones. They're really great. They honestly are not my perfect vision. I probably wouldn't drive with these in just because I have astigmatism and these aren't contacts for astigmatism. The only thing is my lights make it a little bit hazy for me when I'm wearing contacts like this, but when I'm not, like in my studio lights, they're clear, they're fine. They're like something that I would wear to like Comic-Con or just for like a costume or something or a cosplay, but I probably wouldn't drive in them at all just because they're not my perfect vision. But let's just jump on into the spooky stories. So as per usual, I have my Wicked candle here. I'm going to start off with some Reddit stories because I do have approval from some authors and I'm really excited to read them. This one is actually a Christmas themed scary story. So this one is from the No Sleep section. It is from the Reddit author Lyrical Willow and it is titled Elf on the Shelf. So I want to share with you something that has been bothering my family for a while, to wit, the Elf on the Shelf franchise. For those of you unfamiliar with this little Christmas delight, allow me to explain. Parents purchase a genuine elf, a little doll that makes Chucky look positively sane, and place said elf in a conspicuous place to monitor the activity of the children. During the night, elf visits the North Pole and tattles. When it returns, it sometimes brings a message or a little treat for the children. You can tell the elf went somewhere because every morning the little mannequin is in a new place, just waiting for the kids to notice. It's not unusual to find the elf up to mischief, creating messes in the kitchen, tangling Christmas tree lights, going through the trash, etc. Supposedly, this is an idea of a holiday fun for some families. To them, I say, bah humbug, but I digress. The Elf on the Shelf is sheer genius, some of you will undoubtedly say, and for some families, this might generally be a wonderful tradition for Christmas. My own brother uses the elf, they have 2, Lizzie and Lollipop, and my 2 nieces love looking for her every morning and reading the letters she occasionally leaves. In fact, I was really impressed with how much they enjoyed the little creature's hijinks and how they look forward to finding it in a new spot every day. In the name of the holiday fun and family unity, I decided to try this with my 6-year-old son. Apparently, he's too much like his mother, because this did not go over well at all. We introduced the elf Bernard and explained his purpose, to tell Santa all the good things my son does. We then set Bernard on my son's bookcase and said goodnight. 5 minutes later, there's a freaked out kid in my bed saying the elf moved and grew fangs, and was I sure Bernard was a good elf and not the kind that eats little kids? Bernard made his journey downstairs and my son went back to his bed, only to return 30 minutes later to tell me Bernard was chasing the cats. Because everyone knows, elves eat candy canes and kittens. I'll spare you all the ways he woke up in the night, but the end result was that Bernard got mailed back to the North Pole, along with a note from my son for Santa to use his magic ball and fire the creepy elf. That was about a week ago. My son is still worked up about this elf business, but now follows his dad when we lock him up at night to make sure there's no way the elf can get in. Then we have to check under the bed, in all the drawers, in the closet, before he'll even consider going back to sleep. I haven't told him the elf keeps showing up in our living room though. And that's how the end of the story. Oh my fucking God, I hate that so much. I know those elf on the shelves. I know like a lot of my friends and their kids use them and they like them and they've always creeped me out. So no thanks, I don't like that at all. That story freaked me out when I read it, and thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. That was fucking terrifying. So let's just jump on to the next story. All right, so the next one is from the no sleep section again, and it's from the Reddit author Visual Sun 9225, and this one's titled, When I Was 5, I Met the Witch of Blackberry Hollow. I don't know my birthday. The date on my ID card, 7/3/1922, was invented by an Army enlistment officer when I told him that I didn't know how old I was. I'm sure my mom knew, but she died before I could ask her. I'd imagine it was written down in the family Bible, but that was destroyed in the fire. As for my dad, I don't recall him ever being sober enough to remember. If he ever knew at all, certainly, I never got no cakes or presents growing up. I don't think I'm over 100, but regardless, I don't have much time left. There is a story that I need to tell before I pass on, a story from when I was very young. I better start at the beginning. I was born in the Smoky Mountains on the Tennessee-North Carolina border in a place called Blackberry Hollow. I was the youngest of 3 children, had a brother named Jack and a sister named Mabel. There would have certainly been more children, but my mom died giving birth to her 4th, along with the baby, a girl named Sarah. We had a small farm, about 40 acres or so, planted corn mainly, along with some turnips, potatoes, and greens. We kept a few hogs and dairy cows too. Weren't prosperous by any means. No one in the valley was. It wasn't easy farming, on account to the rocky soil, but we did all right. Not from farming. My dad was too drunk most of the time to properly tend his fields, but he did tend his still, hidden back in the isolated mountaintop, and no revenue would ever find it. Lived about 3 miles from the town center. Wasn't much of a town. 2 churches, one in a missionary Baptist church and the other a primitive Baptist church. Which one we went to depended on the forces of the woman my dad was currently courting. Couldn't tell you the differences between the two. The sermons were always seemed to be more than a various reasons you were going to hell for eternity. There was also a general store and a 1-room schoolhouse, which I never stepped foot in, best as I can recollect. Didn't learn how to read and write till much later. And that was it for the town. As I said, it wasn't much. The town's long gone. The government bought it up to form the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Heard that some of the buildings survived, but I can't confirm that. I've never been back to check, and I never will, after what happened there. Now, as you can probably imagine, there wasn't a doctor in town. The nearest would have been a good 30 miles away in the county seat. It would be a day's journey at least, over narrow mountain roads. No one had any cars in the valley back then, for even if they could afford them, there was no way for them to traverse the rocky paths. So what you did when you got ill was you'd see the witch, Ma McDermott. Now, Ma McDermott looked like a hag from a fairy tale. She was nothing but skin and bones. Her skin was so thin and pulled so taut, it looked like her skull would burst through at any moment. Her bony fingers seemed to be twice the length of a normal man's, and were capped with long, pointy yellow nails. She walked stooped over, with the help of a hickory stick, nearly twice her height. Strangest of all were the eyes, pale yellow, like a daffodil. It was rumored that she was over 200, and I believed it. She had a small shack back in the woods behind the general store. Here, she saw her patients. She would set a fracture, dispense a herbal remedy for morning sickness, and rub a salve on a burn. She knew some midwifery. In many ways, she was still like hundreds of other folk healers who practiced in the mountain towns. But she was rumored to have a dark secret. There was an abandoned grist mill deep in the woods, probably about 5 miles from the family farm. It was said that there, Ma McDermott practiced black magic, sentenced with evil spirits, and even called forth the devil. All the children of the Hollow knew to avoid that place. Given my dad, his near state of intoxication didn't teach me much of nothing, warned me multiple times to avoid the old mill, and I listened, until one night. It all started the day my brother, Jack, died. Believe it was in March, for I remember the fields were aflame, the farmers burning them to clear out the weeds and debris prior to the first planting. Jack and I were playing hide and seek. I was still counting down when I heard screams coming from the silo. I ran over and I saw Jack up to his waist in grain, his arms flailing, being sucked down like it was quicksand. A few seconds later, he was completely submerged. My dad told me to run to the neighbor's farm to get some help. He, along with 3 other men, spent hours scooping out the corn until they pulled out my brother. His body looked so peaceful, like he was asleep. But even as a young boy, no more than 5, I knew he was dead. I never recalled seeing my dad cry, but he was very clearly grieving. He became catatonic, lying in bed all day, not getting up except to get more whiskey. It was up to Mabel and me to feed the hogs, milk the cows. We should have been plowing, getting ready to plant, but we were too young to do any of that ourselves. Finally, about a week after the accident, my dad finally got up. I remember riding into town, dressed in all black. I didn't remember the service, but I remember the burial and the preacher man reading. I heard footsteps behind me. I looked behind and I saw Ma McDermott standing right behind me, grinning from ear to ear like a mad woman. But before I could scream, she vanished into thin air. Later that afternoon, I decided to go fishing, hoping to get the image of the witch out of my mind. Just had a little bamboo pole, but I was determined to catch a nice rainbow trout and bring it home for dinner, hoping that it would cheer my dad up. I fished for hours, going downstream further than I ever had, but all I got was a few nibbles. I set back empty-handed, taking what I thought was a shortcut through the woods. The darkness snuck up on me, and I soon realized I was hopelessly lost. The temperature was dropping rapidly, as it does in the mountains, and I had on just a thin coat. I kept walking aimlessly, praying that I would find my way, when in the distance, I saw a little bit of a golden light. I ran towards it. As I got closer, I realized it was the old mill, the big water wheel having split right in two. Freezing, I began to run to the door, but that's what I saw through one of the windows stopped me in my tracks. Propped up in a chair was my brother, the top of his skull cleanly sliced off and set down on a log wooden table right in front of him. Also, at the table were various vats containing chemicals of different colors, copper wires running between them. Floating in one of them was a brain. Presiding over the macrobee spectacles was Ma McDermott. I tried to run, but my body was paralyzed. I watched Ma McDermott remove the brain and set it back into my brother's skull. Nothing happened for several seconds, but then, suddenly, my brother's eyes opened wide. But they weren't his eyes. They were demon's eyes, devil eyes. Somehow, they radiated evil, pure evil. Ma McDermott looked up at me, the same grin on her face that she had at the burial. She started cackling. I ran. I didn't know which direction I was headed. I just ran, away from the mill, away from the witch. I kept running, even though my legs had long ago given out, even though my heart was pounding harder than I knew it could. Never once looking behind me, for I knew I would see the witch riding her hickory stick, cackling, grinning from ear to ear. Eventually, after what seemed like hours, I came out into the main road that led from the town to my farm. I didn't take a rest, but I kept running, all the way back to the farm. My sister was at the door crying. I hugged her for the last time and went upstairs and tried to wake my dad up, but he was passed out from drinking. I told my sister that Ma McDermott was after us, what I had saw, but she didn't believe me, and she just went to bed. I made sure that all the doors and windows were locked, and I got my dad's hunting rifle out. I sat by the front door, the gun, which would have been too heavy for me, aiming, resting on my lap. I must have fallen asleep, for I woke up to my dad shaking me. Smoke was filling the house. He picked me up and rushed me outside before running back in for my sister. As I sat in the cold night air, I saw from the light of the burning houses a figure walking stiffly towards the pines. In the right hand was a torch, still ablaze. Despite the distance, I knew who he was, my brother. I saw my dad running outside carrying my sister. She had passed away. My dad thought it was a rival moonshiner who set his house alight, but I knew the truth. Although I never told him, if he lived longer, I might have. But he took his own life a few weeks later. I have set to live with one of my dad's brothers, who is the foreman of a textile mill in Asheville. For years, I had nightmares that Ma McDermott, or my brother, or once him, would show up in the night, in my windowsill, and snatch me away. But they never came. For my whole life, I've wondered what Ma McDermott was doing with my brother's corpse, what her motive was. I've never come up with any satisfactory answer. I just hope that when my time comes, I will be in heaven with my dad, my ma, Jack, Mabel, and my little sister, Sarah. I pray every day that I will not end up in hell with the devil and with that Ma McDermott, the witch of Blackberry Hollow. And that's how they ended the story. So that was a really sad story. It was really fucking creepy, but it was really sad because there was just a lot of tragedies that happened and a lot of death. Thank you so much to The Visual Sun 9225 for allowing me to read your story. That was really, really good and really fucking sad. Okay, so I'm gonna read one more story just from Instagram, and then I'm going to end the video here because I'm not entirely sure how long this video and stories have been, just because I've had to stop a bunch of times. So let's just jump on into one more story from Instagram. They said, "Hey girl, I just found your channel a few months ago and I love listening to you read scary stories while I do my evening walk. I would like to share a story of my own from when I was younger. It's not that creepy, but it's kind of unsettling. The story takes place when I was a teenager, maybe around 14 or 15 years old. I'm 26 now. I had gotten sick, just a cold, and was chilling at home on my computer in the study. Since I was sick, I had to stay home from school. And since it was the middle of the day, none of my parents or my sisters were home. I was home alone, which I normally had no problem with, especially when I was younger. But that day was a little bit different. It was super overcast, the type of day that just had an eerie vibe to it because there was no sun and everything was just tinted gray. I really don't like these types of days because I'm a sunshine girl and I get a lot of good energy from the sun. That day, I was already feeling low energy because I was sick and the cloudy weather wouldn't help. I was on my computer, just browsing the internet, when I heard some noises from outside the other room. It just sounded like creaks that the house makes, but it made me flinch when I heard it. There was only 1 or 2 creaks and then silence, but it wasn't a comfortable silence. It had that feeling of awareness, the feeling that someone was there, waiting. You know what I mean? Have you heard or felt like that before? It was a heavy type of silence, one that made the hair on the back of my head stand up and give me goosebumps. It put me on edge so much that I went to close the study door. I usually never close it, but I felt like I had to. Once I closed it, I felt a bit better, but then I heard more creaks. It got closer to the study, and it put me on edge even more. I froze and just listened. The silence became even heavier, and I swear I felt some type of negative presence. Luckily at that moment, my friend from school texted me she was walking up to my house to visit me and give me some notes from my classes that I had missed. The doorbell rang, and I bolted to the front door and opened it. My friend was smiling and stepped through the doorway into my house. As soon as she did, her smile dropped, and she looked concerned. Looking around behind me and up the stairways, she asked me if someone was there. Then my friend proceeded to purposely scream at the top of her lungs extremely loud. I had to cover my ears. She screamed for like 10 seconds and then stopped. I took my hands off my ears and looked at her confused. She smiled and said, "Okay, it's gone." And then she abruptly and cheerfully said, "Okay, bye," and walked out of the house and left me stammering in confusion. Like, what the fuck just happened? I tried to call her after and asked her if she can just explain what the fuck just happened, and she just smiled and said, "See you later." I tried to ask her about it when I saw her at school, but she didn't really elaborate, so I just dropped it. After she visited me, I went back inside to the study, and I no longer felt the creepy feelings of the presence. My house just felt normal. So that's my story. Nothing really crazy happened, but I guess what I had been sensing put me on edge really wasn't my imagination. I remember reading somewhere that when you're sick, you're psychically weak and sometimes bad spirits will try to mess with you during this time. So maybe that's what happened. I don't know who was in my house that day or what they wanted, but I'm grateful for my friend that came over that day. I'm still friends with her to this day, just not as close. And I think about the scenario every now and then. Maybe I'll ask her about it. The thing is, I'm kind of scared to find out what her answer is. Thanks for reading. That's really fucking creepy. Maybe is your friend a medium? Does your friend see ghosts or anything like that? The only answer that I really have, because that's fucking terrifying. I'm going to end the video here though, because I need to edit this and post it right away. I'm not too sure how long this is gonna be. I'm hoping it's around the 20-minute mark, but we shall see. So thank you again to TTDI for allowing me to work with you and sending me your contacts. Your contacts are actually very comfortable and I had no issues reading with them in. I could see my phone just fine, and honestly, they're great. And they look really pretty. I love this color. This color is stunning. So thank you so much for working with me, and thank you so much for sponsoring this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.